Could Juventus be forced to sell? Liverpool are in pursuit of a new midfielder, goals galore for England, and a transfer roundup all coming up on today's OneFootball Daily News. As I'm your host, Angelina Kelly, let's get into it. So last night we finally saw a bit of a bounce back from Juventus after two consecutive defeats against the likes of Chelsea and Atalanta as they got a win against bottom of the Serie A table, Salernitana. Now normally you wouldn't celebrate beating bottom of the table, it's just normally standard for a team like Juventus, but this win does now place them in 7th in the table, although they are still 11 points behind leaders Napoli, who have actually only had one loss so far this season in 14 league games. Now although we're not even halfway through the season and there could still be a few twists and turns when it comes to Serie A, there are already worries about whether Juventus will even be able to qualify for next season's Champions League. I mean, it doesn't help when you're already so far down the table, there's so much work to be done by Juventus, you're not getting the results that you want, plus you've got some players that are out injured, it's bound to be adding pressure, and this pressure has now reportedly transferred to the future of players, as according to some reports from Italy and ESPN, if Juventus do not qualify for Europe next season, they could be forced into selling for €100 million their star Federico Chiesa. Now Chiesa is still on loan from Fiorentina technically. Juventus paid a reported €10 million first and will be obliged to reportedly pay another €40 million to make the transfer permanent, but could this all change? Chiesa is of course a star, he was one of the standout players at Euro 2020, and what this means is that of course the interest has been growing, but under Max Allegri he has been struggling a little bit with his form and maybe adapting to tactics, and reportedly Chelsea's interest in particular is now growing even more for the player. Now the issue here is that if Juventus do not qualify for the Champions League, then the sale of a player like Chiesa could most certainly help to compensate for the prize money that they will miss out on if they are not in the competition, which has also reignited rumours that they could be also willing to sacrifice their defender Matthijs de Ligt, who has of course already been linked with Chelsea also, as they reportedly could be losing the likes of Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen. However, if your team is not good enough to get a Champions League spot, why would you then sell two of arguably your best players, because this would then surely make you weaker as you try and get a Champions League spot again in the next season. Yes, the transfer money would be good, but could they then struggle to try and recruit new players, because of course they wouldn't actually be able to offer them Champions League football. So this will be a very interesting one, but like I say, we're nowhere near the end of the season, and I still think that Juventus could maybe pull things together and try and finish in one of those spots. It would be tough, but who knows. Dennis Zakaria is a man in demand. The Gladbach midfielder has a whole host of clubs interested in him, but reportedly his priority is getting a move to Liverpool. Now the player has been linked with the likes of Roma, Juventus, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, etc., and especially the fact that he will be a free agent in the summer means that even more clubs are becoming interested in him, as he reportedly has opted to not sign a new contract with his current club, as he has dreams of playing in the Champions League consistently and winning trophies. Whilst Barcelona were also reportedly interested, a move to Liverpool for Zakaria would give him a much more lucrative financial packet, and it's probably more of a stable option when you look at the position that Liverpool are in compared to Barcelona. However, if a move to the English club did fall through, reportedly the player would still be interested in talking to Barcelona afterwards. As the player has seemingly rejected an offer from Gladbach, the club are now in a dilemma as to whether they keep the player until the end of the summer and he leaves on a free, or they do try and sell him in January, with the reported fee for any club that would be interested about £8.5 million. This comes as the club's sporting director Max Ebo has spoken about basically if players do not want to stay at the club, then they would be stupid to basically not address this. However, they do have to weigh up their options as to if they would be more successful in the second half of the season if they kept hold of these players. This doesn't just apply to Zakaria, but also to Matthias Ginter, whose contract ends next summer and is also in demand from numerous clubs. Now, Zakaria may not be the name that excites every single Liverpool fan, but he has been rapidly improving and is 25 years of age, which means you could argue that he's just about to head into his peak years. Is he a direct replacement for Jorginho Wijnaldum? Absolutely not, because the two players do different things. However, there has been a lot of talk at Liverpool that do they even need any more midfielders? Yes, Thiago has been injured and he hasn't been on top form, but it seems like we're seeing more and more glimmers of the Thiago that we all saw at Bayern Munich. And when players like Harvey Elliott are fit, who definitely did show promise, with all midfielders fit and on top form, are Liverpool okay? Now, I'm not too sure, because when you look at Liverpool's midfield, you have the likes of James Milner, who will be turning 36 soon. Then you've got the likes of Jordan Henderson, Thiago, that are in the 30 and over club. Whilst I'm not writing those players off because they are still extremely talented, what this does mean is that they fall more into the bracket of the experienced players. And then when you think of players such as Curtis Jones, of course, and then also Harvey Elliott, they're probably more on the inexperienced side. Still great players with a lot of talent, but it is hard to try and bridge that gap between too experienced and too inexperienced. And you could argue that the only player that kind of does that at the moment is Fabinho, being the age that he is at 28. Maybe Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, but of course he has had dips in form and injuries, so maybe this is where Zakaria could come in at 25. It'll be interesting to see if they get the player, but for now, of course, Liverpool fans will be focusing on the Merseyside derby tonight, and judging from Liverpool's recent form and Everton's recent form, we could be in for a very entertaining game. Last night, there were goals galore in the Women's World Cup qualification games, and I've got to kick things off with Spain. Alexia Putellas, she won the Ballon d'Or on Monday. By Tuesday night, she was on the pitch for Spain with her trophy pre-match, I must add. She managed to find the back of the net as Spain got a 8-0 win over Scotland, which unfortunately did end their unbeaten start to their World Cup qualifiers. Also on the score sheet for Spain was Ballon d'Or runner-up Jenny Hermoso, and really, to be honest, although Scotland did have their chances, had it not been for their goalkeeper Lee Alexander, it could have been a lot worse. But for Spain, they extended their astonishing winning run to 16 games and 96 goals without conceding. Meanwhile, for the Republic of Ireland, they had a record win 11-0 against Georgia. Despite some good defending from Wales, they did lose 2-0 to France, and Portugal suffered a 3-1 loss to Germany. But the win of the night came from England as they got their biggest ever competitive victory as they won 20-0 to Latvia. Amongst the goals was Ellen White, who became the Lionesses' record goal scorer as she surpassed Kelly Smith's record of 46, and her hat-trick on the night means she now has 48 goals in 101 appearances for England. For England, there were 10 different goal scorers. Lauren Hemp managed to bag herself her first England goals. She scored 4 on the night, and there were hat-tricks from both Arsenal's Beth Mead and Manchester United's Alessia Russo. Now, what this means for England is that they are at the top of their World Cup qualifying group, 6 wins from 6. They've scored 53 goals in the process without conceding, and this just caps off a perfect World Cup qualifying campaign so far under new manager Sarina Wiegman. And it'll be really interesting to see how this England team performs in the Euros next summer against maybe more competitive teams such as Spain. And now we have a transfer roundup. This is where I take a look at some of the other news and transfers going on in the footballing world. And first up, last night in the Premier League, we saw Newcastle fail to get a win over Norwich. The game ended 1-1 thanks to a controversial Newcastle penalty and a brilliant goal from Norwich's Timu Pukki. And also for Leeds, they left it very late to get a 1-0 victory over Crystal Palace. Also last night, we saw Dusan Vlahovic take part in Fiorentina's 3-1 victory over Sampdoria, which saw him score his 39th Serie A goal, with only Erling Haaland being the only other player born in the 2000s to score more goals in the European top 5 flights. Liverpool have confirmed that Brazilian goalkeeping legend Claudio Taffarel has joined the first team coaching staff. And Atalanta have reached an agreement with head coach Gianpiero Gasperini to extend his contract until June 2024, with the option of extending for another year after that. So that's it for today's OneFootball Daily News. As always, check out all the other news and content, and until next time, I will see you all later.